Why, hello, everyone. I want to thank everyone for stopping by. If you guys are here tonight, we got Martinez mostly tonight for some Destiny 2 conversation. As always, questions are welcome, and we'll have some questions on deck. But before we get started, let me just welcome Martinez mostly right on the show. Thank you so much for stopping by today.
Of course, yeah, I'm super excited to be here. I've loved watching your content creation journey, and as soon as you talked about a podcast, I knew I was 100% down, so super humbled and honored that you invited me on, and happy to be here and talk about Destiny.
I really appreciate you stopping by when you can on Twitch and stuff. Yeah, this is gonna make an interesting night. I'm not gonna waste any time. Let me just get right into this. First of all, I gotta ask, how did you start playing Destiny, and when you got into Destiny?
Yeah, so I think like a lot of people, I was really into Halo, kind of growing up. That was a big that was a big game in my household and my friend group. So as soon as Bungie left, that was definitely kind of like a sad moment for me, because I loved all my moments I had with Bungie at the helm of Halo. Now, when I heard they're coming out with another game, that made me excited. And so as soon as I started hearing any glimpses in those first kind of trailers, the live action trailers, I was like, oh man, I'm definitely in. But yeah, at the time, I wasn't as hardcore of a gamer, definitely wasn't anything close to content creator, anything like that. So I didn't get to play any alphas or betas or anything like that. I was just, I didn't even think of that as a thing. So I was just waiting like a normal consumer to buy the game when it came out. And I want to say I probably bought it the week of it coming out, pretty quick. And so I jumped in. I have an older brother. We both kind of jumped in, we played the campaign, and we're like, man, that was really fun and everything like that. We didn't play too much of like PvP or anything really like that, and no in-game content for sure. And so we're like, yeah, that was fun. And I was like, oh, let's, go ahead and play through it again. We played through it like one more time, and then probably, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, I was like, yeah, it was really fun, but, I guess if that's all that it is, it's all that it is. So I traded it into like my local game, trade a game shop. And I just thought that was a fun experience, but it was what it was. It wasn't about a week later, and a buddy of mine said, oh man, have you played Destiny yet? And I said, yeah, I played it. It was really fun. And he was like, have you played a raid? And I was like, no, I haven't. And he was like, are you serious? Like, that is like the craziest thing. It's like the best thing like that's ever happened to gaming. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, it's like a whole 6-person thing and blah, blah. And so I was like, oh man. And so then it took me about another week, to basically suck up my pride and go back and buy it again. So I went back and I bought Destiny again. And by the time I did that, The Dark Below came out. So I was like, what? Now I have to pay another like $20, right, to get this expansion. But I got it, and the first raid that I ever played was actually that raid. So I was, yeah. So that's actually how I started. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And I think that's why it's really difficult for me, because then I went back after already playing that raid and played the Glass Vault, right? The Vault of Glass. So when I played that, then I kind of already had a little bit of experience of like understanding how raids went and stuff. And that was definitely a blast too. I felt like way more confident playing that because I had already played the other raid. So it's always the toss-up for me of those initial two, which one I like better. But what I really liked about the Crota raid was all of those weapons, all the weapons you can get, and they have like special perks, right, that work specially with the raid. Where it would you can like shoot through the shields and everything of the knights. And I was just like, oh man, the design of them, it was so fun. And I love being in that very last room and, just everybody sweaty palms, everybody's watching, the one player who's running sword, just like pink, 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 running around, jumping and trying to hit him. And you're standing over there on either one of those side areas around that ledge later that everybody started getting on, and you're all just like hoping that he does it right. And oh man, there is nothing about like, there's no comparison between like those first raids, now later, we can kind of talk about like my favorite raid of all time. Yeah, definitely, yeah, that's how I started. It was kind of a funny introduction because I got it, I was excited, but then I actually sold it.
Yeah, you're like and then now you have to go get it again.
And then I had to go buy it again.
Yeah. That was actually a very interesting story.
Yep.
I got to answer it because it's how we do things on the show, is that we all answer the questions. So I got into, my brother was playing the beta, and then he was able to get me into the beta.
Nice.
It was one of those, the beta or alpha. And we ended up playing, and I'm like, this is a fun game. And granted, I am 2 years younger than the recommended age. It's 13. I'm 10 at the time, so I'm like, why not? It's fun. So I went up playing a little bit more, and just it got me hooked.
Yeah.
I wasn't really much of a PvP player, but you bring up a good point, Halo. That's how we grew up, and how my brother found out about Destiny is through Halo.
Mm-hmm.
And it just became a whole big thing. I remember one of my fondest moments, besides the raid stuff, which I really don't want to talk about this time. I think my really favorite moment is SRL, Sparrow Racing League.
Oh, yeah.
I remember playing with my brother and my cousin, and he's like, and I remember my cousin was a really good Sparrow racer, and I ended up beating his butt. I ended up beating him, and he's like, how? I just said, gas through the turn and come on out. And he's like, so smart. And I remember him. He got a little jealous there. And those are one of my favorite things.
Man, I love Sparrow Racing. It's funny you bring that up because it's one of those topics that like it doesn't get talked about much. And then I also feel like it's something that people like loved it or hated it. There's like hardcore hate against that. Like they hated it in the game. They didn't like it. Usually the people that weren't good at it, right? And then there's people that like loved it and they're like, all, with pitchforks, like bring it back. And man, I loved it. I loved that they had like all the different, you can get like the different
horns and sparrows and armor.
Yeah, right. All the different horns and everything. And I think the other thing too is like it had shortcuts, right? Yeah. So you could get to like know the maps, right? And then there's certain shortcuts that you're like, if I hit it right, it'll be worth it. But if I, barely am off on the shortcut, then it's worse than taking it like the regular way. So yeah, I really enjoyed the SRL. That was a blast.
I'm proposing this idea now, if Bungie's listening. Take away Gambit and give us SRL back. Screw all that.
I could see a lot of people going for that. There's also a lot of hate on Gambit too. So.
Yeah, I know. You bring up a good point where the haters, and this is something we talk a lot about on the show. Because this is one of the key things. And we were talking about it as Iron Banner returns Tuesday at Reset.
Yeah.
I know Bungie has been trying. We all know that they've been trying to update Iron Banner with Rift, with now Fortress. And every time they seem to try something new, the haters come on right on out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's a tough one, and I think it's tough for any developer for sure. But I think like a big game like this, where you have thousands and thousands of very passionate players, I think it's a really tough to like walk that line of giving like a fresh, new, fun experience, but then still like holding true to the things that initially drew the players, like that made people fall in love with Destiny. And I think that's where a lot of times Iron Banner, I think it's kind of like a testing ground. They've done a lot of things, like you kind of mentioned, switching up Iron Banner to kind of make it new or fresh or different. And sometimes they hit it and sometimes they don't. But I think, like you said, there's always going to be the people that come out as the haters. And I feel like the ones that are the most hardcore of haters are the ones that play the least. Like that could just be me, but I feel like people who really enjoy the game and they play, on a daily basis, I feel like they have to find ways to still enjoy the game, or otherwise, they'd be depressed. If you're playing a game every day and you don't enjoy it, then obviously you're going to be depressed or you're going to quit, right? So yeah, you lost you there for a second. But yeah, I think that is really tough. And I've found that sometimes I've enjoyed Iron Banner a little bit more, sometimes when they've changed things up. Sometimes I'm like, I don't really know if I enjoyed it as much this time. But I will say I'm a big Iron Banner fan. So even the times that I'm taking a break from Destiny, where I'm not, playing hardcore and stuff like that, I still come back when I get that alert that Iron Banner's up, or I see a tweet that Iron Banner's coming. I have to get in, at least, go through and, get all the bounties done, or at least get all the tasks done, as they've been changing it from bounties and stuff. But yeah. All right, either. I think we lost your mic feed. Let's see. So while you're doing that, let's keep talking about Iron Banner. So I've been a big fan of Iron Banner from the beginning, and I feel like it's because it gives you like that extra adrenaline when you're playing. It's kind of like, when you're playing ranked, but I feel like there's still like it gives you like that extra feeling of adrenaline when you're playing it. And I actually like it when I can go in a little bit under leveled, because then I feel like every kill is hard fought. I'm playing against people that are higher, light level, higher power level than me, and that I'm still being able to get kills. I feel like that's a little bit more fun. And I like that they added those later in, right? They added where where you had to be underpowered and kill someone higher powered. So it almost made people put on lower powered gear to be able to get finish that bounty.
Yep, I definitely know that feeling, and I did lose my mic for a second there.
Okay.
Because it was not appearing for some reason. Yeah, right. But that was some really good things. Yeah, I was saying before I lost you, is that I understand Bungie's trying to do a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of difficult. I can see where they're coming from. They're trying to do all these changes, and every time they try something, they get negative.
Yeah.
They're like, do this better. It's like, sometimes they can't.
Yeah.
And I really want to bring up this point, and this is what scares me. GMs, Grandmaster Nightfall, the changes with that, and how they said it used to be so hard and players enjoyed that. They said it was too hard, or now it's too easy because now anyone can do it, really.
Yeah.
And
I think I lost you again. But yeah, I think with Nightfalls, with anything kind of like that, I think even if you think of Trials, they've done a lot of things with Trials too. Once again, you're kind of walking that balance of, you have the hardcore players that want it to be basically almost impossible to beat. So once again, you kind of get that feeling of when you actually accomplish it, that you accomplish something great. And then, but at the other hand, you have thousands of players who don't even touch it because they feel like it's way too difficult, that they won't ever be able to attain it. And obviously then that makes you frustrated. That makes you lose player base. That makes you lose people that are going to buy the new expansion when they're like, man, everything's just way too hard, or I feel like I'm gatekeeped in some sort of way. So yeah, I think that that's a really hard balance where, you almost have to, it ends up being one way or the other, right? You end up catering to the hardcore, or you end up catering to, the new Guardians, the new players of Destiny. You're trying to draw new ones in. And I feel like that's just, you're always going to have kind of one way or the other. And from a business standpoint, probably it makes more sense to draw new players in and keep kind of the casual players versus the hardcore, because obviously that's going to make more sales, drawing more people in. And yeah, so I can understand the frustration of, players that love that. They love that challenge. They love doing, solo Grandmaster Nightfalls, right? That's maybe how they make their own content and stuff like that. I understand that, I guess that side of it, right? But on the other hand, I can see the players that are new and it being really frustrating. And I can kind of see it both ways myself, because I've been both. I've been a new Guardian at the beginning, and then I've taken like long breaks, I guess you could say, from playing Destiny, months and months at a time, and then I jump back in, and then I'm basically like a new Guardian again, and I'm trying to learn everything and trying to get up to power, and obviously that can be really frustrating. So yeah, I can kind of see both sides of it from, a business standpoint, the developer standpoint, and then also, as a consumer, as a player of the game, I can see it both ways. But yeah, not sure when you're going to come back yet. But yeah, I think when it comes to that, I feel like personally, just because this is also my nature, I'm definitely like a lover, not a fighter type of personality. I would rather more people enjoy and play a game than ever feel like anybody's like, gatekeeped. So, I'm definitely the person that's going to invite people to play a raid when they've never played before. If someone's struggling on the campaign, I'm definitely going to be one of the person that kind of jumps in and helps them out, So, yeah, I think that when it comes to that, I definitely would rather lean towards the part of making things more accessible, a little bit easier to play, versus to the point where, you have to play 24/7 to be able to even have a chance at beating some of these in-game things. Because yeah, it feels bad when you try to play a game and you can't for one reason or another, whether it's you're underpowered, underlight, don't have the right weapons or gear, the right armor, the right builds and things like that. Once it gets to that level where, you're like, oh yeah, you can't even make a difference. Or the worst of the worst is when people tell you can't do it. You can't do it because you don't have this, or, oh, you can't do it because you don't have this armor. You can't do it because this. Now, I understand to some extent, like if it's like light, like there is a minimum, recommended light. That's one thing. But, when I don't appreciate it, I don't like it when players will say, oh, you have to basically be like max light to be able to play this with us or whatever. And it's like, oh, they're basically admitting that they're not good enough to help anyone else, or, they're just being rude and, they don't want to help anybody. So, that's another thing too. Even me personally, playing Destiny from the very beginning, I wouldn't ever say I'm the best of the best, but I'm pretty consistently good at any aspect of the game, whether it's raids, nightfalls, PvP, PvE, all of it. I can definitely hold my own. I'm a decent player. And whenever I get to talk to people and they'll see like maybe I haven't played in like a few months or something, so I'm not like up on everything, all the new meta and stuff like that. and they don't want to play with me, and I'm like, what? Like it doesn't matter. Like if somebody hasn't played in like even 6 months, if they were a good player 6 months ago, you're still going to be a good player on Destiny. It's not like you forget it, or the game doesn't change so much that you turn into like a bad player. And I won't name any names, but there was recently a decent mid-sized, I'd say, Destiny content creator that I was talking to, and I was asking him, kind of just like, oh, like, what do you like about this and changes this? And we have a little conversation. And towards the end of it, like as a normal, nice person, two people playing the similar game, I just said, hey, that'd be fun sometime. We can get together and, play, whatever, and get together and play some Destiny, blah, blah. And he messaged me back and he said, oh man, like I don't play with anyone, and like that aren't like basically like professional Destiny players. And I was just like, what? It was just like, man, like I can't imagine that person having like a happy life. It's like, when you're taking it that serious, that for one, he doesn't even know, he's never played with me, he doesn't know how good I am. But yeah, it was just kind of funny. It took me back a little bit. I was like, really? Like, for one, you don't know how good I am. Like I probably have similar amount of hours into this game as you do, and, so it's just kind of like, yeah, I don't know. There's lots of that and negativity in any sort of community, but I feel like Destiny, since I'm close to the game and the community, I see that a lot more than maybe some other games. But it's just like, oh man, that always bothers me when, especially like, back in the day, remember like LFG, especially like on like Destiny 1, and people would be like, you have to be max light, you have to have the emblem that you already beat it, you have to have Galahorn, you have to have, whatever, and it's just like, what type of people are you looking for? Like these people, if you're looking for someone who's already beat the raid, who's already like a pro at it, has everything, then like why would they want to play with you? Like you should probably be looking for people that are trying to attain those things, because those people are going to be more serious about completing it, right?
Yeah, you're not going to leave halfway through.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to point this out. Thank you so much for pointing out, for handling and making your own questions and talking while I thank you. That goes perfect to what you were saying on that you're a really good person in the community. I wanted to bring that up since I finally decided to swap over to the other rig, because the other one decided to crash again. That's why I ended up leaving by accident.
Oh, man. Yeah. No, I appreciate you. Thanks for saying that. I really do try. Like I say kind of everywhere, I'm a husband, father, gamer, in that order. And so I definitely try to be, a good person and somebody that my wife can respect, but also a good role model for my children. And that comes out through my gaming, because, I try to be a respectful person. I try to be a role model in whatever gaming community I'm in. And I just know that, you're going to get back whatever you put out. And so I want to put out, love, and I want to welcome everybody into the community. I think gaming is such a beautiful thing. And so I would love anybody I meet to game, so I want them to feel like as welcomed as possible into whatever it is, even if it's a very difficult game and complex game, confusing game at times, as Destiny can be. So,
yeah. So, yep, I'm glad of that. And then you're bringing this up. What do you miss from the content vault inside of Destiny 1?
Man.
Destiny 1, then we'll go into Destiny 2, the secondary question.
Okay. So, Destiny 1, I feel like from the very beginning, the most excited I was. I feel like so many people were like into the Galahorn, right? And obviously I was excited about it too, but I very early on got it. I actually got it as a drop on Vault of Glass, on the now I'm spacing on the oracles. So there's the oracles, and then you can kind of like jump up inside that mountain, and there's that secret loot box.
Yeah.
so I got it dropped there, and I literally said nothing. And like, because I knew everyone, like all my friends were gonna be so pissed, so they're like freaking out and yelling at me when I got it.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so just like right away, and so like obviously it was so OP, an amazing weapon, but definitely from that time period, I was more really wanting to get the icebreaker. So a buddy of mine had the icebreaker, and I was like, oh man, I want that so bad. And that's the one where I just felt like I was grinding, and I was so excited every time I opened one that there's a possibility it could be icebreaker. And so I think that quest of getting that was kind of like a lot of people trying to get Gallahorn. So I feel like icebreaker was definitely like my top weapon that I super appreciated, and I loved it all the way through, like especially like Prison of Elders. I loved using Icebreaker on Prison of Elders, and so like that. If we're just talking about like weapons, content, all that, I feel like bring back Icebreaker, bring back Prison of Elders.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. Bring back Sorrel, bring back Prison of Elders, and give that goddamn mic back. I know it's a long shot, especially with how broken it was in Trials. I still remember that. Those days were, I miss those days.
Yeah, and they kept on like moving around, like how many seconds it took, like to like reload a bullet or like regen a bullet or whatever. And I was like, I didn't even care. Like they at the very end, it was like double or triple the amount of time it was at the beginning, and it was still good.
That's what Icebreaker was, and I'm worried that if they bring it back, it's gonna be really hard to balance. You bring a point. I wanted to actually touch on this back on the LFG days, because it was very toxic. Must have Gallahorn, and people were being kicked because of it.
Yeah. And
it's like it's a drop rate. You're trying to do the activity to get Gallahorn. And I think Bungie made a right decision removing it from the game.
Yeah.
Bringing it back when it was nerfed, because it was really hard to nerf it.
Yeah, it's true.
It's like that, and then I'm really happy when it getting it back inside of Destiny 2. Unfortunately, I use Gallahorn very often. I'm an eager person. I keep that sword on for emergencies.
Yeah.
When you get across the map. Like, today I was playing comp, and I was playing, actually it was Rift. And we always were like doing this back and forth thing where we would get to the rift, they would kill us both as they respawned. They kill us, we kill them back, and we would be almost banky. And finally I said, what, heavy's up. I'm gonna grab my heavy and I'm just gonna eager edge in. Because it was like it was 2-0. He needed the loss point. I kinda just said eager edge. And sometimes coming duality, when you're running late on the bells. And that's one of my favorite weapons. If that's what I was saying, hopefully we get those weapons, this content vault. What do you miss from inside Destiny 2 content vault?
Like right before we jump into that, while you were talking, I thought of something else. And the class specific, the class exclusive weapons, remember those?
Oh.
Like, it was, now I'm spacing what they're called. I just had them in my head, but there was like, it was like a scout, I believe, for like the warlock.
Yeah.
And it kind of had a funny, it was like Tlaloc.
Oh, yeah.
Right? There was like Tlaloc, and then like the Titan had their own, and then the Hunter had their own. There was like a sniper, I believe.
Yeah.
But I was like, that was so cool because it kind of like, it was once again, it added like an extension of the classes. Like, so it's cool because you're like, okay, if you want, to, have the special abilities of a hunter, okay, cool. You have like all this stuff. Obviously you have to be a hunter. But then like extending it into the weapons, I felt was really cool because then you're like, oh man, I really love this weapon. So, I have to have that character, right? I have to create a character. It made it more like useful to have all three characters because you're like, oh, then I can use like this weapon or whatever. But
yeah,
that was another one that was kind of cool with Destiny 1.
Destiny 2 had that with some of the swords. Quick Fang.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, they did do that. The swords, each one. Yeah.
It was a really good time. We'll get into that when the time comes. But what do you miss from the Destiny 2 content vault? We gotta ask that question.
Right. I feel like by the time Destiny 2 came out, like I felt like they did pretty good with like the rotation of stuff where I never felt like I missed anything like too crazy. But and then also like timing of when Destiny 2 came out, I'm trying to think of like specific weapons that came out and are gone. But I think because some of them were from Destiny 1, they rolled over to Destiny 2, but then got vaulted. But like, let's see, what is the... Yeah, and then they brought some back too. That's right. Yeah. Like, what is? Yes. How did you know? That was exactly the weapon I was thinking of. But yeah, Hung Jury. Like, I love that weapon. I had so many kills on that weapon. And then because that was it was Dead Orbit, right?
Yeah. And then it got put in the Nightfall pool, and then they took it away again.
Yeah. Just like,
I'm really happy with the changes that we can craft those weapons.
Mm-hmm. And then Truth too, the hand cannon Truth.
Oh yeah,
that one was. I spent so much time with that one. I felt so good with it. I would mostly use it in PvP, but I just loved it so much. I would use it, depending on like. I had a couple, like a roll for PvP and one for PvE. I would even use it in PvE just because I love the feel of it. And the fast shooting. Spare rations too, yeah.
I love my spare rations. Speaking of the Hung Jury and spare rations, I don't own those two guns anymore. Hung Jury, I was going to keep them until time needed. I had the God roll. I had the God roll, the full God roll. And my chat made me delete it.
Oh, no.
And then I was keeping the spare rations back when they announced sunsetting in case they decided to take away sunsetting. I was praying to God.
Mm-hmm.
My chat said, no, you don't get the last 2 weeks of the weapon. Delete it.
No.
And it wasn't in rotation anymore. It was right after the final rotation.
Oh man.
And I'm like, no. It was just the unluckiest thing.
Oh man, now that you were just kind of thinking about it too, it's like Pinnacles. I actually really enjoyed Pinnacles. I enjoyed like going through and getting them, kind of like we were talking about a little bit earlier. There was a few moments where I was just like in the very tail end of like unlocking a pinnacle, like in Gambit or something, and I'm just like so sick of Gambit, but I'm like, I gotta get this shotgun or whatever, And but yeah, I love those chases for those pinnacles, and when they, even like Redrick's broadsword, what other Mountaintop? Yeah, Recluse. Yeah, Recluse was another one that I was definitely late to the party on that one, and I feel like I only had it for like not even a month before they like totally nerfed it. But like for that month, I just felt amazing. I'm like, oh man, now I see why everybody loves this. And I had Recluse like that month was the last Iron Banner before the nerf. And I got to use it, and like because there's an SMG bounty in there, and I was just like, oh my, this is just fantastic. And then when they slowly got rid of Pinnacles again, and I was just like, oh man, it was such a fun way to get some of these different weapons. What was the other one? Was it like a?
There was a scout.
What was that scout? It was like Jack's throwing knife, or
Randy's throwing knife, I think.
Okay, Randy's, yeah. It was Randy, yeah, that guy. So, anyways, yeah, that one too. Like, I felt like those were fun because it was kind of like, you obviously, like, you have the campaign, obviously. And then once you get through that, then you have, like, the little stuff going on in the seasons and stuff. And, you know, but then when they give you, like, those extra little things, it's kind of like, when you finish your weeklies, you kind of have something that you can keep on playing and go back to. And I kind of feel like that was really fun. And it wasn't repetitive, like doing an event, you know, like doing the event over and over. I felt like it made it fresh because it's like, you know, just play PvP, any type of PvP, and you can like work towards getting this. Or you can play Gambit, but any type of Gambit you want, any style you want, but you're slowly working towards, you know, opening up this like really cool pinnacle weapon that then you felt good having, at least at the beginning, because you're like, you know, not very many people have this or whatever. But yeah, I liked that, you know, the pinnacle weapon.
I liked it too. I want them to just remove sunsetting. Just give us all the guns.
Yeah.
Well, I don't care about getting them back. As long as they're in the loot pool, I'll take all my weapons. Bring back rations and see what happens in PvP again. My KD will go up.
Yeah.
Like so low right now. I'm just like, because I don't have my PvP God roll spare rations.
Yeah.
Next, so I want to answer my question. I really miss from the content vault, besides the weapons, I miss the Leviathan raid. All the legendary.
Yeah.
I remember completing it on, I think it was day one, because we always talk about day one raid races here, which we'll get into later on. I know I was doing it. We ended up completing it, and at the time, it wasn't, we were getting close to Forsaken when it first came out, if I remember the date. So we didn't have that crossplay yet. We just got crossplay recently.
Okay.
And I remember because I was playing on PC at the time.
When
it first came out, and I had a PC that I was using. And yeah, I think I was using my PC at the time. And I remember we didn't have that Do Not Disturb feature yet. So we always used alt accounts to cover our back because, you know, when people want to join, they DM you constantly. So it's just an easier way to keep it kind of silenced. So we used alt accounts.
Okay.
To kind of just protect us from notifications at the time. And we did this for all of the years. I think we just did King's Falls when we stopped. Because I think I did Val on the alt account. Then I forgot my logins. I used to have a notebook of all my logins.
Oh, man.
Because I had, like, so much. Because, like, I had every account. And I'm like, what am I going to do? So I couldn't find it. And at the time, I remember using the Do Not Disturb to protect myself. And I really miss Leviathan. I remember trying to take a couple of my friends in Gauntlet. And it took us 6 weeks of Gauntlet to complete it.
Oh, man.
And that was one of my favorite memories, trying to beat Gauntlet. And then my friend's like, let's just burn the plate. Because you had that cheese where you took Dead Batter, and you used to just, and they were close, and you hit all three, and it would still give you the orb inside. And those were fun memories for me.
Yeah, it's kind of funny you mentioned that about the alt accounts, because I feel like I've heard people talk about that, maybe not even necessarily just because of the notifications, but just in general. And I never did that, but like I had mentioned before, I had an older brother. And my older brother, like, he's always been, like, okay at games. I've always been, like, a little more into them, and I feel like that's probably why, you know, I was always, like, a little bit more skilled, like, at Halo, and then when we moved to Destiny, same thing. And so, like, for him, he definitely wasn't, like, going into, like, raids and stuff, you know. He more like PvP and going through the campaign and everything. And so what I did is I didn't have an alt account, but I had an account and my brother had an account. And so for him to get all the cool stuff, a lot of times, like, I was, like, you know, maxed out of everything. There's nothing else for me to do. So I would just jump and log into my brother's account, and then I would do the raid on all three of his characters. or if he was like trying to get, unlock like a exotic and do like the quest and he was struggling with it, I would jump in on his account when I was like done doing everything for myself. I would go jump in on his and do it again. And so, yeah, I kind of feel you there where, I felt like I was playing a ton of Destiny at the time, but it was some of the best memories because I was spending so much time with like friends and meeting new people and, helping people and I think it's kind of like contagious when you take someone, like you said, through the raid for the first time and they're just so excited and so ecstatic and like that feeling of accomplishment that they feel, you get to feel it again, even though you've done it 50 times.
And teaching them is a big accomplishment.
Yeah.
Like me,
for sure.
Like me, I've been teaching some of my new clan members. Like I've been working on a community clan for mine, and we're trying to grow it. We need people helping, and to finally be able to, because when Twitch introduced the new ads incentive, we kind of a lot of my friends put them on, and so have I, because they give you a better split rather than the other way. And all money I make on the channel goes right back into the channel. I don't pocket any of it.
Yeah.
And that's what I do in order to make things fair. Like, so at the time, we used to do a lot of Sherpa runs.
Okay.
We used to have our own community Discord, and we did Sherpa runs, but then a lot of Twitch started to die out a lot, so we stopped doing Sherpa runs. And to feel that sense of accomplishment again, to get back into teaching people how to raid, it feels really nice. Because you have them accomplishing something with the help of yours, and then they can take what they learned and teach others.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes me happy, to see the community come together.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's another thing, like, that you kind of brought out is about the community as a whole. Like, just from the sheer fact that, I was probably running, 12 raids a week for a time because I was doing 6 on my account and 6 on my brother's account. I was meeting like these really cool people from all over the world, these, friend groups from Europe or from Mexico or wherever, and it was really cool because then you're growing your friend group, but then you're also like, you're traveling without ever having to travel. You're getting to hear like the struggles that they're having in these different countries. You're getting to understand how they like think and how they do things. And it's really cool because it makes you more open-minded when you kind of understand how, people from other places around the world, how they think, how they act, like their sense of humor, things like that. And so I really love that part of it too. And like, even to this day, there's people that I don't even play Destiny with anymore because they've either stopped or like, we take breaks at like different alternating times. And like, I still keep up with them just because we made a friendship through Destiny.
You bring up a good point with your friend group. I have a friend that I was bringing up about Leviathan at the time. And me and him, every friend group has their fights. We all have been blocked by each other at some point in time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anytime lately we finally started talking, me and him are always fighting about something. We're always either pissed at each other. This all started back in 2020. We blocked each other times. I think this is our first 3 months in the last year of us speaking.
Yeah.
And at the time, we didn't speak, and then finally me and him sucked up our pride, and we started playing Destiny again together. And that's like the best friendship builder again. Me and him have worked through our issues, and there were a lot of issues. We used to do it through Destiny. And being able to do that, and like what you said, having that friend group is what everything is good. I enjoy that.
And I think on the other hand, it's almost like, there's pros and cons to that situation because now that we've kind of been talking about this and I was thinking about it, the other thing is, so the one friend that I told you about from the very beginning that told me, like, have you played a raid, and who got me back into Destiny, and one of my best friends to this day, he stopped playing Destiny. and like a lot of people, kind of just got burned out with maybe the monotony of it, maybe the fact that he felt like he was always having to pay more money, that he was like constantly paying money for the game to keep playing. And, there's probably lots of different reasons why he pretty much stopped. And I feel like those types of times when like you're really good friends who you play with all the time, who you've already been able to like sync your schedules with each other, like when they stop playing, I feel like that also could be a big blow. And I think for me, that's really what kind of started my my decline in playing Destiny, because I definitely, I don't play like 8 hours a day like I used to, or 10 hours a day, having like 12 hours on the weekend. I don't do that anymore. One, because of like family life and kids and everything, but the other is just, I kind of lost like that core initial group that I used to play with all the time. And then now it's like like the friends I do have, it's like really hard to have that same sync that I used to have. And so I end up finding that I play a lot more Destiny solo than before. It was like I hardly ever played by myself. I felt like no matter what I was doing, even if I was like collecting stuff on the moon or something back in D1 days, it was like, hey, let's squad up with a couple buddies and, we'll all go around and, try to get some materials or whatever. And now I kind of feel like, I have a really weird schedule, like as a family person, but ends up being like late, and I can't really plan it because who knows when the kids are going to go to bed, or if my wife wants to watch a movie with me or a show or something. So then I end up being like, okay, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning. Let's go bust down and play some games. Who's online? No one. All right. I'm still going to play, but, like I don't have like that. Before it was like, all right, from this time to this time, like I'm raiding. From this time to this time, I'm going to be hitting bounties and stuff like that. I don't have that availability. And so it's kind of funny how in one way it's amazing to have like that really close friend group in Destiny, because you can help each other. But then on the other hand, if you lose that, in a way it could almost be a detriment, because then you're so used to playing with a certain group, and when you can't do that, it makes it a little more difficult to jump in.
I definitely can feel that. I know from experience, when I play by myself, I don't have that same enthusiasm.
Yeah. Yep.
The only thing I kind of did was I kept myself pushing today.
Mm-hmm.
I usually game with friends. When you're not gaming with friends, you get that burnout more.
Yeah, I agree.
You get the burnout inside. And to have that happen to me, I was feeling that today. If I was playing Crucible with my friends, that would have been a lot more better.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because then you can also work together.
Yeah. Yep, you can. And then also the other thing, you kind of mentioned it about like working through issues and problems, but on the other hand, it's like you're also like, if you have a bad match, you could have had like an amazing conversation though, right? So you could be like losing every time, but you guys are having a blast and you're laughing and you're joking, and so at the end of the night, maybe your KD is like horrible or worse than when you started, but you can walk away from the game feeling like it was such a good gaming session. Whereas like the same thing happens by yourself, you're just like, you're angry and you're just like, why did I even play? I lost every single match.
Yeah, I know. Me, I actually almost broke my inside blue light glasses today. I threw them. I just tossed them on my desk, and they went almost behind my desk. And I'm like, come on, because I'm trying to play PvP, and I'm just like, God damn it, keep it together. You don't need to break another controller. I have broken the controllers last year. My account, last time I broke a controller last year was December 13th. And the only reason I broke is I dropped it.
Yeah.
And it was a whole big mess when I dropped the controller, which we're not talking about on the podcast. I'm not bringing up the whole situation because I don't feel like bringing it up right now.
Yeah.
Let's just say there's some lawsuits going on. That's all I'm going to fucking say. That's all I'm saying. Sorry about my language, chat. That's all I'm going to say. And I broke one, and that's the last time I broke a controller, and I got 2 new ones for Christmas. Actually, 3 new ones. And I'm like trying to say, don't break it. Don't break it. You don't need to break another controller.
Mhm.
'Cause I
Yeah.
got one
So do you
and
pretty much play controller, or do
I
you
play
play mouse and keyboard?
keyboard, but I've been the only reason I haven't been playing mouse and keyboard is my wrist get tired.
Oh, yeah.
And like I'm not playing PvP playing controller. I mean mouse and keyboard because it's a lot harder. I know my keybinds, but it's a lot harder to play mouse and keyboard. I'm not used to it.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, like 'cause I feel like like everybody's a little bit different, and it maybe depends on like how you like first started gaming. Like I first started gaming on a really old computer, you know, playing like floppy disk and stuff, and so I kind of like at least understood that, and then like going through playing like you know, Doom and stuff like that. So I kind of like that's kind of how I started gaming, but then I got into like Nintendo 64 was my first owned console. And then after that, like having like the original Xbox, and kind of ended up going Xbox for a while and having PlayStation as my side thing. And so then I got into like controllers, right? And it wasn't until probably, I would say, like right as Forsaken was coming out is when I built my first PC. And so then I was like kind of going back and forth, like playing on Xbox and then trying to play on the PC. And like one of my buddies was like, you can't do that, like, because you're never going to do like mouse and keyboard again, like if you do that. And so he's like, you just have to like force yourself to play mouse and keyboard for like a month. And so I was like, all right, I'm just going to do it. And so like a whole month, like all my Destiny was like on mouse and keyboard. And then I went to play on my Xbox like that following month, and I was like, what the heck? Like I feel like I suck on a controller now.
Yeah,
And so yeah, like now it's like in my head, like something in my head, I feel way more comfortable on mouse and keyboard than with a controller.
Yeah, that's me actually right now. You bring up some good advice. Maybe I should try that. Because I do sometimes play other games on my Xbox with some of my Xbox friends.
Yeah.
And it's like, do I want to push myself on mouse and keyboard, or do I just want to stay Xbox controller and have that?
Yeah.
But you bring up a good point. I'm gonna go lock my Xbox in a box and put a timer so I don't open it for 1 month.
Yeah. And then I think the other thing is it's not even necessarily that, like, you know, I think, you know, a lot of people are totally fine using both. And like you said, like, you know, I play a ton of other games on my Xbox with my controller, or there's some games even on PC that like they feel way better on controller, like Jedi Fallen Order, those sorts of games. It feels better on a controller than mouse and keyboard. But I feel like if you force yourself to a month of playing, like, is, you know, for people who love like certain games. So for us, let's say Destiny, you force yourself for a full month to use mouse and keyboard, your skills are just going to get better too. Like you're going to have put that time in. And so you're going to feel better, you know, like knowing, like you said, knowing your key binds, but just feeling comfortable of like how hard to push them and when, and because all that stuff is, the timing is so much different than a controller.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, tonight we expect no controller tonight.
There you go.
So, next question. This is kind of interesting. How did you feel about the season in regards to some of it being reused from Season of the Worthy?
Yeah. I think for me, I'm definitely a little like on the softer end of any of like the content stuff, especially now. Like in the past, I kind of understood a little bit more like there being droughts, but that was because I was, you know, playing like 60, 70 hours, you know, a week of Destiny. So it was kind of like, you know, like I still understood, but I understood it because I'm like, well, I'm on the minority of the people that can get through this amount of content. But now, like we had kind of talked about, kind of like being, you know, really busy, like family guy that's like really, you know, having to be creative about playtime on Destiny. I feel like a lot of times the content, even if it's kind of light for the average person, I feel like is plenty for me. And then if anything, it kind of feels good when it's lighter because then I don't feel like overwhelmed, like, oh man, I'm never going to finish, this season pass, which I pay for. So then it's like I kind of feel bad sometimes when I can't finish all the content in the season or finish as far as I want to in the season pass, to like get the unlocks and everything. Because I'm like, I paid for this, and then I didn't even finish it, So like I do understand people's like frustration of like reused assets, but at the same time, I don't mind it if there's payoffs in other places. So for instance, if there's going to be like some light seasons during the year, but then they knock it out the park with these expansions, then I'm like, I kind of feel okay if they're like, we kind of had to do it this way because we had to allocate resources for Lightfall. Then I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Or for instance, like, there hasn't been a lot of like Iron Banner new weapons, right? But then they come out with like a really cool one, or they come out with like a seasonal weapon or something that's really cool. Then it's kind of like, okay, like kind of pays off in one way or another. But like, I totally understand everybody that is like hardcore Destiny and they're like, a lot of these are reused assets, it's very similar to another season, or like there wasn't enough content really to get me through the months. I totally understand that, but where I'm at right now, like personally, I feel like 100% okay with like what they're putting out, and I'm still like working on stuff, so.
Yeah, same here. I got 18 more Seraph missions to do that where you have to go get the submine core. I still got 18 more to do for a season challenge.
Yeah.
I'm only 17 out of 35, and I'm sitting there because I got a lot to do. Because over the years, I kind of gave up on a lot of stuff. I stopped doing Catalyst. I stopped doing Old Seal. I didn't really have a good team that wanted to do GOS, stuff. So I'm trying to get back into that. And because of all of that, it makes things harder. And that gives me a lot of content because now you have to catch up on everything.
Yeah. That actually, you just reminded me of something. You reminded me of another thing that I missed. But I've really loved the chase for like the calcified fragments. I thought that was such a blast, and like they made it convenient, like not just picking up some, but some were attached to like certain missions or certain strikes and things like that, or there were some that were like specific to another thing that I think was amazing, but also the Court of Oryx. And so I think those things too, I definitely missed, and I'm trying to think what it was called, but what was it? It was kind of like it was similar to Court of Oryx, but it was like, was it like underneath Spider or something like that? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And you'd have to get like some sort of like key to get in there, and then it was like, you had to like fight different bosses. So it's kind of like similar to the Court of Oryx, where you had to get an item to even go into the room or start the event. But then depending on which one you had is like you could fight different types of bosses, which could drop like specific weapons and things like that. Or it was just awesome to like grind up at the beginning and, for power and things like that. But I think those were pretty fun. I think those were two different, the Court of Oryx and whatever that other one was called. They were both, I felt like, really good, and it didn't feel like too grindy because once again, like I feel like you're always doing it with like 3 other people. So then it's like you're like having a fun time while you're doing it.
Those missions you brought up remind me of 0 Hour and Whisper.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I still remember Whisper of the Worm, my friend, actually the one I was playing Levy with. And he's like, "You okay, kid?" I'm like, "I don't know." My Titan was actually at the time, every time I would jump, my Titan would bounce off the ledge.
Oh, yeah.
And I was landing on the ledge, and somehow it was just bouncing me off. And I remember those missions. Those are fun. Those little tiny trying to beat it.
Yeah, those are such a blast.
I remember my friend, the one I told you about, he was patient, and I missed those missions.
Yeah. I was trying to think that first Whisper of the Worm one, wasn't it? There was like the timered one too, but you had to go and fight.
Fallen.
Yeah, the fallen guy that you
Yeah,
had.
that was 0 Hour.
Oh, is that what that was called?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then there
Okay,
was
yeah.
one boss that the community named. His name was Trevor. Who
Yeah.
remembers Trevor the rat? I'm going to call him the rat because he would mow you down like a rat. I remember
Oh, man.
Trevor. I would
Yeah.
rather take those missions as a reskin
Mhm.
and just put another exotic weapon in. GG.
Yeah.
I'll take that.
And I love that it was like, I don't know if you felt the same way, but for me, like anytime like when you played those like timed missions for something, it felt like the first few times you did it, like you like kind of sat there as everybody's dead and you're just like, it's impossible. There's no way. You're like, there's no way you could do this, and then like you start getting there and like you'll get to the boss and die like right away. And you're like, there's no way we can like get all the way to the boss room and beat the boss in the timer. We can barely even get to the room, but then obviously as you play, you find ways to, end up beating it. But I just love those, feelings when you're thinking to yourself, like, there's no way you can beat this. And then you end up doing it.
Yeah. And I miss that. I miss those types of missions. But
Yeah.
Next question. Thoughts on the ban process? Let me elaborate before you answer that.
Okay.
Do you think we should have a system where people should be able to know as a community? Let's say I was banned for cheating.
Yeah.
Should the community have like should Bungie do an automated system that allows people to know what the whole entire community know what they were banned for?
Yeah, I think that'd be great. I feel like personally, I think that would have to go in tandem though, with a lot better communication about the ban, because I feel like I've also heard a lot of stories about people getting banned that probably shouldn't have. So I feel like it kind of have to go in tandem, like all across the board. They'd have to have a better way of, if you got banned, being able to like communicate and like, appeal it and go have like an actual process. But then, yes, like if someone was found cheating and there's 100% proof, there's video footage of it and all this type of stuff, I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome if there's like a little symbol even like on their account or something like that, that said like a C, like, oh man, this person cheated before.
Yeah, like the reason I bring this up is because back in July, I think of 21, there was a tweet from Boxing Gangster where he asked why he was banned. And Bungie flat out destroyed the man's career and said he was basically found cheating on multiple accounts. And to know that, because if people do stuff in the dark and then they get banned and they say, why was I banned? But to have that information would make things easier, I think.
I think so too.
To have that information would make things 100 times better.
Yeah, I think especially for something like that. I mean, obviously there would have to be some sort of system where, before obviously their whole account is just gone, right? But let's say like if there is like a one chance type situation that they give, I think that another thing would be like, it'd kind of be like, they have this thing on their account, right? So then when anyone else is playing, they know, and everyone that they're playing with knows that they had an issue with that. So he's going to have to be on his best behavior. And then everyone that's playing with them is probably going to keep a better eye on them because they're like, oh, this person had been caught cheating in the past. So if then you're going to be kind of paying attention more, like, is he doing funky stuff? Is he not dying, to, a Gallifreyon to the face or whatever,
Yeah. And I bring this up because like a lot of people could be false banned, but people could be banned for their actions. Like, let's say a big streamer does something to a smaller content creator, and the big streamer broke Bungie's TOS, and he was banned.
Yeah.
I think people, the smaller content creator or people that reported, should know, oh, this guy was banned for his behavior towards me.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah, because some content creators are getting away with being not held accountable, and they're just keeping their mouth shut on it.
Mhm. Yeah.
And sometimes it happens.
Mhm.
Like what happened with you is a prime example. Sometimes people are dicks, and if the bigger they are, they should be held accountable rather than not accountable.
Yeah. I agree, and I think that's another thing, like, especially, like, as Destiny started, like, rolling out, like, these, like, guided raids and things like that, like, they're really trying to, like, get the community to help new players and stuff like that, right? They're really kind of pushing for that, and I feel like that situations where even if they're big content creators, doesn't matter, if they're basically gatekeeping new players because of them being rude or, you know, telling them, you know, that they're not good enough, their never will be good enough, like things like that. I feel like if they can get enough reports, that then Destiny could do a similar thing and put basically a demerit on their account so people can be like, oh, this person has been rude, you know. And then I feel like, you know, just as a community, we shouldn't be rewarding, right, all of these content creators. It doesn't matter how big they are. We shouldn't be rewarding them with, like, you know, our viewership and even our money, our subs and stuff like that, if behind their scenes they're super rude. You know, like, it's like, yeah, you can jump on and be like, act like you're all friendly, but behind the scenes be telling people like, I'll never play with you, like, you suck, like, look at your KD.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's like
or look at or let's take this example. That you're one of the content creators got mad that you took something to Twitter.
Mhm.
And having him, you took it to Twitter to hold the guy's him accountability for his actions.
Mhm.
Right? Wouldn't you want them to be held responsible for their actions?
Yeah.
And then you go into a big old stink about it?
Mhm.
And it's like, and if people know that that's why you're banned for it, is making a big stink and actually limited someone's First Amendment right, people should know about it.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Well, three more questions left for the night. What's the biggest issue in Destiny that you think needs to be fixed?
Oh, man. So you asked this one to me personally, and so I'm going to take everybody else's opinions that I've heard over the years away, and if the question was asked to me from Bungie, or if I was in a place to basically make this change and not thinking about really anyone else but being like a little selfish here, I feel like personally what they've kind of done with like the armor system and with the mods and everything like that, although I think it can be really cool, like, and like if you have the time to spend making all of these really crazy builds and everything like that, and it could be really cool. I think for me personally, and for I feel like the casual player, it's just too much. Like I think for you to be successful on what they give you the ability to be successful when it comes to armor and making builds and stuff, like you basically have to be a hardcore. You have to be a hardcore to be able to have all of the different mods that you need, all the different, and I think, like, you know, I kind of saw some videos on like some of the changes coming up, people talking about the changes with Lightfall and everything, and it seems like they're making a few things a little bit easier, but at the same time I kind of feel like it's still kind of a lot, you know, especially like, I'll give you an example. Like, I have a little cousin that's thinking about getting into it. Like, I feel like I don't even know it well enough to be able to like explain to him about making like really good top tier builds, because I'm like, man, it's like so much, like it's almost like I don't even want to get into the builds yet because it could be really confusing, and be like, oh man, I have to know all of this type of stuff, and like, oh, like what element is it? What is it? This you have to max it out here, and you have to do this. It has to have these. You can only stack so many of these, and otherwise it doesn't even benefit you at all. And like there's just kind of a lot to that whole armor system, and like obviously with the weapons, there's similar stuff to it. But I feel like really like once they kind of introduce that across like all of the armor, then I feel like it's just a little too much, because then it's like you have to do the same process with the helm, with the chest, with the gauntlets and the feet, and then like it's just kind of like, oh man, the class item, like each thing kind of just starts adding. And I feel like right around the time they really started getting into that, that's also kind of around the time where I stopped playing as much as I used to. And so I feel like it was kind of bad timing for me, and it kind of a little bit, once again, I know there's going to be so many people either that hear this or totally disagree with me because they love it. But like me personally, I feel like it kind of, made me be like, oh man, like, do I even have enough time? Do I have enough time to play this game to the point where I can, be, have like these, really good builds like Destiny or Bungie wants me to build. It's like, do I even have the time to like build these out and research which ones work the best together? And because back in the day, it was more like, okay, like what exotic, armor piece am I going to use? And then that's kind of like what your build is. It's like, you have kind of obviously like your stats that you can kind of base off of, and you're just looking for high stats of whatever. But for the most part, it was kind of based around the one exotic. Now it's like you can almost build builds that are better without an exotic based on the mods you have. So it's, yeah, I think it's a little too much for me. And once again, like I know I've heard tons of people, content creators, that just love it. That's one of their favorite things to do. And hey, like it's content. They can spend hours and hours figuring out this stuff and making videos about it and whatever. So like I totally understand that. But yeah, for me personally, I would say that I think it's just getting a little bit too much of, to the point where it's really difficult to like casually play Destiny.
And that's what I was actually going to agree with you on that. Like, I have one of my friends that was in Destiny, and then he got overloaded because I'm like, remember, you have to run this to get some of the upgrades to upgrade your armor. He said, you want to check 2 people daily to get your mods you need.
Yeah.
To have that happen to him, he's like, no. He basically said, I don't know now. It's a waste of the game to do that to him. And I felt really bad because this is actually one of my best friends I met in high school, and now he doesn't even want to play the same game I play.
I know.
And it's like, that can be a big turnoff. I'm hoping that a lot of stuff does that. And then, let me add this. They don't, certain mods are no longer in the game, so you can't do collections.
Exactly. And so I think that's that whole, like, the FOMO thing. So, like when they start putting stuff in the vault, I feel like that's another thing where it's like, I'll just say like a little side part about my life is I work in Hawaii, but I also live in Wyoming. So I spend a lot of time in Hawaii because that's where I work. And so like half the year, a lot of times, sometimes more, I'm in Hawaii. But Wyoming is where quote unquote my house is, and, my PC and everything. So that's more like my home, I guess, my home base. And so there's a lot of times where when I'm working in Hawaii, I don't even get to play like at all. If I do, I'm trying to play some cloud stuff, just because it's easy and convenient to jump on. But anyways, like, so sometimes I won't play Destiny for a ton of time, months and months and months. And then I'll come back and then I'll find out like, oh man, like I missed this and I missed that, and I can't see this now, or this, even like cutscenes and stuff because I missed the whole season, and I feel like that FOMO of like, if you don't play every day, or like once again, like going to Ada, trying to get those mods and everything, like same thing. I'm glad that from what it sounds like they're taking that away. But it was like, once again, like I hated hearing like someone's like, oh, did you get this mod? X mod, and I'm like, no, and like, oh, Ada had it yesterday. I was like, well, you should have told me yesterday. Like, what's telling me now? Like, no, I'll never get it, or whatever, and I feel like Destiny's really good at keeping people hooked, because you pretty much do. Like, if you want to be, as proficient as possible as a Destiny player, you definitely have to play like all weekend, but you probably should be like checking in every day, at least on a couple of different items, or playing a couple of different things every day, and then pretty much on the weekend, because obviously that's when you're more realistically going to be able to play like the raid and stuff like that. But then you have trials as well. So it's kind of like they hook you for the week. And so if you're trying to play any other games, or, if you're out of town or on vacation, it's like you're like way behind everyone else. And I feel like that's kind of the downside. And then what I end up having to do is, watching some of these, content creators about like the lore, and like, okay, let's watch the cutscenes and listen to them explain the story, because I haven't seen all these cutscenes for 2 months or 3 months, whatever.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely know that feeling. I went on out of town for 2 weeks on a cruise ship.
Mm-hmm.
Last 2 Christmas ago in 21, and I come back, and I missed one of the scholar at Zercel.
Oh,
and
yeah.
The cruise ship, and I see that he's selling the scholar, and I'm like, I didn't bring my gaming laptop. And it's just like, I really want, and it was the God, I think it was the God roll too, it was a really good roll that he was selling. And I'm like, damn it, I needed that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I totally, like, back in the day too, like, I'd be, it'd be like, Monday or whatever before reset, and I would find out, I'd be out of town or doing something, and I would find out that, Zur had like an awesome roll on something, and I would be like, dang it, and like I'm already at work or something like that, and I'd like call my wife, and I'd be like, can you log into my account? Go to this planet, go see Zur, and like buy this for me or whatever. There's so many times that I've done that, and there's no other game I've ever played where it was like to the point where I'd be like calling family members to like go do something for me, because like there's a time limit.
I actually remember, because you bring up a good point. There was 2 times where I actually called my brother. Actually, one time I called my brother. I was at school and the new Destiny update came out, and I got caught in 6th period watching the stream of one of my friends, and I still had to walk home. I'm like, hey, can you go start my Xbox so I can go get the game updated? Because I want to come home and I want to start streaming. I want a game. And I come home, and that was the only time I called my brother to do that for me. I'm like, start my Xbox. I want a game.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and there's a couple of times too, like, I'm, a super laid back, chill, like, type of player. Like, I don't ever rage. Like, that's just not me, like, not really my personality. But like, there's been a few times where I've definitely been frustrated, and like one time I just thinking of doing stuff for me is I asked my brother. So once again, remember what I would do for my brother. I would go on and I would like get on his account, and I would do the raid, like on challenge mode and everything, and all of his characters, I would do a ton for him. And so there's a few times where I'd ask him to do something for me. And I remember one time I was super close to like finishing everything on Iron Banner. And I had like a couple of things left, and I was just playing, and I was just like, oh man, I'm never going to make it. It was like early Monday morning. I had to go to work. So I was like, oh man, I'm just busting. And I'm so close. And I was like, oh man, should I be late to work and finish this out? And I was like, no, I got to go. And so my brother wasn't working. So I asked him, hey, would you jump on? Like, it's literally probably will take you like a couple of games, And he's like, okay. And anyways, long story short, he ended up just not doing it. And I was just like, are you serious? Like Iron Bears are my favorite things, and I needed those, I needed to finish those bounties for like, ranking up in power and stuff. And I was just like, I can't believe it. It was like a couple of things. It was literally like maybe, a couple more kills and, like a couple of this and that, whatever. It was so close, literally like a couple of games. And I was just like, are you serious? But once again, it goes back to that thing. Like, Destiny has that, that kind of like definitely weekly, but like even sometimes like a daily situation where if you don't have the availability to play, a lot of times it puts you back, like, so it's really hard to be casual.
I remember that you bring up two good things. When Dare's released,
Yeah.
when the dungeon released. No, actually, no. When Witch Queen was released, at the
Okay.
time I had 6th period. I had my schedule in high school was 1, 2, 3. Then I came home for 4th and 5th, and then 6th period I would go back for 6th period.
Okay.
And Witch Queen released. I was like, go back to school? Do I want to go back to school? Or do I just want to play the Witch Queen?
Yeah.
And granted, I'm home at 11, and
Mm-hmm.
and reset I think was at 10.
Okay.
Yeah, reset was at 10, so I didn't have that server issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew because I wasn't gonna get into 11 anyways, because that's the time I was getting in at the time with the server issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I ended up ditching 6th period to play Destiny. I ditched my 6th period. I was just playing the Witch Queen Legendary campaign. I actually get a text message from my teacher because she texted me. Because this was actually my athletic training class where we actually went out and helped the players if they were injured and do water and stuff. She was like, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm not feeling very good." And she's like, "You're faking it." And I turned around and I just closed my phone and left her on red.
Yeah.
And it was like funny because Destiny has a hook for me. It's like,
Yeah.
how are you gonna
It's so crazy because like I was just thinking too, like I've never. I mean, I'll take that back. There's definitely Halo, but I was like probably like what I would consider my adult life. There hasn't been another game that like I'll play all night still. Like I'll do an all-nighter playing Destiny, and like no other game really does that. Like I can play a couple hours of something else and be like, I better get to bed. Or like I have 2 kids, and like my son is 6, Hezekiah, and then my daughter's 3. So 6 years ago, like when my son was first born, like I would literally stay up all night playing Destiny because my wife would like take care of him during the day. I was doing college and working at the time. And then when I would get home, I would then take care of Hezekiah and so she can get some sleep. So literally he would just like be on my chest and I would just be playing Xbox for like all night, like 8 hours, 10 hours. And then I would go take a shower, get ready, and, either do a college class or go to work, depending on, what day it was. But it was like I pretty much was just running on 0 sleep. I went to college and then I worked at a bank, and then I would come home and just play video games and taking care of my son. And so like it was crazy because it was a crazy time. But and like running on 0 sleep, but at the same time it was just such a blast, Like I think it's just, being a dad and you have no other choice, like is why I did it. But like it was such a blast and it's such a fun time because it was like, obviously I was taking care of my son, and like having a newborn kid is just so amazing. But at the same time then I'm just like playing, Xbox with all my buddies like all night long.
Yeah, I definitely know that feeling of trying to manage everything as I'm in
Yeah.
college. And I'm
Mhm.
already trying to look into late fall because I have to book for my spring semester.
Mhm.
I get 2 days off, Tuesday and Friday. I'm like, what's the schedule going to look like? Am I going to be able to game? Am I going to be able to not fall behind and stuff?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I'm like, okay, I should be ready for Worlds first. I should be ready for day 1 if they're doing the same thing. I'm hoping that they do
Right.
the same
If they
thing.
keep it Friday.
They are doing it Friday. They already came out and said it.
Okay.
It's March 10th, but I'm praying to God that it is the same thing as they did for Legendary, because it was 1520, which was the light level for the Valorade.
Okay, yeah.
And when you completed the Legendary version, it gave you the 1520 armor.
Mhm.
So I'm hoping that it's the same thing where you just have to worry about getting weapons.
Yeah.
Because if that's so, then I should be fine.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
wanted to ask you this question. How are you feeling for Lightfall? Are you excited?
Yeah. Yeah, big time. I had kind of mentioned before, like I kind of now, just because I'm so busy, I've really just I'm definitely like a casual Destiny player. I jump in when I can. I always have a blast doing it because I just love Destiny as a game. I don't have to be like top tier anymore. Like that, I'm kind of like a perfectionist on a side point. So I think that was part of the reason why, I kind of like always back in the day was like top of everything, because I'm kind of like a perfectionist. I want everything. I want to have everything perfect, But now I've definitely been able to kind of change my outlook, and be realistic with like my time and that I can play and stuff like that. And so I just, whenever I get a chance, I'll jump on, even if it's like a few Crucible matches or something. I'll jump on, have a good time. I love, kind of going through, like, I love to have cutscenes, for the different seasons, even if they're small. I love the lore aspect of the game, and so I'll jump on and kind of do the best that I can through the seasons. But what I really love is the expansions. So now, where I'm kind of at in life, expansions for me is kind of where it's at, because you get a big chunk of stuff that's not going away. Going away in a couple of months. So I have the time, I don't feel rushed, and I can go through the campaign, and, and really enjoy it and not feel like it's like going to go away at any time. And so, yeah, Lightfall, besides just like all of the story that I know is kind of culminating to this, I'm really excited about that. But just in general, I'm just super excited to get a big chunky campaign again, like Witch Queen was, and, kind of, explore like a new world, really. A new world, explore new class abilities, basically be like Spider-Man, flying around. Like, it's just, crazy. I'm excited about really all of it. I can't wait for it to come out.
I'm definitely excited for Lightfall. I'm kind of worried because the trailers they can edit the trailers to look so well.
That's true.
And then they kind of drop off. And that's my concern, because that's what the campaigns sometimes do.
Yeah.
They look so good, and then they just drop off.
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling that Bungie's going to be redesigning old jumping puzzles and fixing the jumping puzzles that are currently in game in regards to A, we can fly around like Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And B, the game's going to be broken because all you need is a Titan with Thunder Crash, and you can connect your strand to the Titan, and he can just Thunder Crash you all.
Yeah, I am really interested on how they're gonna do like jumping puzzles and stuff like that. I mean, I guess I haven't like seen enough to know like what the distance is. From what I can see, I don't think it's like gonna be like unlimited. I feel like maybe it's gonna be like a swing or something, and so maybe it's still gonna have like jumping puzzle-esque where, then if you run out of those, it's not like you can constantly just like go through a jumping puzzle using that. Either A, it's going to be like on a timer, or B, it only goes like a certain distance or something like that. So it's almost going to be like you have so much lift, with it, to kind of get around. But yeah, that'll be really interesting to see, because that's a big thing with Destiny. I mean, you talked about it even with the Whisper of the Worm mission, that's one of the most like kind of like difficult, frustrating parts of like a lot of these like in-game, Destiny content is like these jumping puzzles where it's like could be super frustrating, but then when you actually get it, it gives you kind of that euphoria that you made it.
Yeah, and it makes me concerned because we've seen a Thunder Crash Titan and people connecting to the Titan.
Yeah.
In one of the trailers. It does scare me. I'm pretty sure Guardians are no longer going to be able to fall down off the edge of a cliff.
Yeah, I wonder, like, it too, like, obviously they've spent tons of hours playing with these new, subclasses and stuff like that. But I do wonder if because we've seen it before, right? We've seen it before where they put something out, and then it's just like once it gets out to the masses, it's like this is obviously broken. It's way OP, or whatever it might be. So it's like sometimes stuff goes through where it's like for all we know, as soon as like we get these things out, something could just be so OP that I feel like they're going to have to nerf some strand stuff probably almost immediately, like once we all start figuring out doing different things with it.
I want to make it clear, like it was Stasis. Stasis
Yeah.
was nerfed in the day.
Yeah.
I think it was a day. I think it was less than a day.
Yeah.
It was less than a day, and all you just see is, due to an issue, we have disabled Stasis.
Yeah.
At least it's not Telesto.
Yeah.
I still remember the Telesto thing. Besides the Telesto thing, I remember they actually disabled it because it actually gave you immunity. Immortal. It made you immortal.
Yeah.
They disabled it, and we're investigating issues where Telesto has re-enabled itself. I kid you not. There was a tweet on that.
Oh, man.
I'm like, oh god, Telesto's gonna just come through the fourth wall with the pyramid ship. It's gonna break the fourth wall and come in to shoot me. And then my ghost's gonna go through the fourth wall and bring the guns and armor from Destiny 2, and I'm gonna become a guardian at that point.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah. Good times.
Yeah. Well, that's all the questions I have. I really appreciate you coming out, having a good chat with everyone. I wanted to ask, where can these guardians, amazing people, find you if they have any other questions to ask? Yeah,
so I spend a lot of my time as far as like communication on Twitter. I actually just hit a milestone. So I just got 1,000 followers on Twitter. It's not really something that I keep track of, but a buddy of mine sent it to me this morning, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. I've met so many super cool content creators on Twitter. It's a great way to communicate and share your thoughts and opinions on games and stuff. And so, yeah, on Twitter, long story short, Mostlymartiez, which is my gamer tag, was taken, and I dealt with Twitter forever trying to get it because the person who has it, their account is blank. They don't even use it. But yeah, they won't give it to me. So I had to reverse it. So on Twitter, it's at Martinez Mostly. And then I also have a YouTube channel with my son, which is Hezekiah's Toys and Games. We do like unboxings. We mostly like toys and stuff like that. We do some fun little videos. We kind of just started out. And then we also have a Twitch under the same name. So a Twitch account, Hezekiah's Toys and Games. And we just stream video games, mostly Nintendo Switch, but we do like some Amazon Luna. And in the past, before Stadia closed, we were doing some Stadia. But yeah, mostly now it's going to be like Nintendo, Nintendo Switch and Xbox.
Yeah,
so.
Rip Stadia. Stadia, it was a very good time. I have to mention this. I remember at one time I was bored in one of my classes and I had my laptop with me. Because regular Windows laptop, I pop open Stadia and I start gaming, and half the class is like, what are you doing? Because it was like one of the days we didn't have anything to do, and I'm like, yeah. Well, for people that want to know how to get in contact with me, all things Destiny, A_T_D podcast on Twitter, all things Destiny on Twitch. You can also reach me at Arc_Storm2 on Twitter, YouTube, Discord, the whole 9 yards. Pretty much either all things Destiny or Arcstorm2. And thanks guys everyone for listening and watching. Have a great night.